Welcome back, dear listener. Your patience with our previous lessons will finally pay its dividends in knowledge and understanding. For today, we are discussing Age of the Imperium, M31, present. The Age of the Imperium is the time period that began with the end of the Horus Heresy in the early 31st millennium, and is typically referred to in the present tense. The approximate time period begins in 0014 M31 and continues forward to the present, with the last year represented in imperial records before the opening of the Great Rift and the start of the era. Indomitus being 99999 M41, the Age of the Imperium is generally conveyed as spanning from the end of the Horus Heresy to the narrative present, a period of approximately 10,000 Terran years. Time of Rebirth, ca M31, km32. During the Time of Rebirth, the Imperium of Man slowly recovered from the destruction and loss of the Horus Heresy. The myriad wars of the Great Scouring were fought in the years immediately after the end of the Horus Heresy and the death of the traitorous Warmaster Horus. For a time after the end of the wars of the Scouring and the retreat of the traitors into the Eye of Terror, the Imperium knew peace from the corrupted followers of the Chaos Gods. At the same time, many alien species that had been fought during the Great Crusade reappeared in human space to take advantage of the disruptions caused by the Horus Heresy. They soon plagued the vulnerable worlds of mankind already prostrate from the destruction wrought by the heresy. In order to prevent a single person from controlling as much military power as Horus had mastered and eliminate the risk of another large-scale civil war, numerous reforms were enacted at the hands of Robert Guilliman in his new capacity as Imperial Regent and Lord Commander of the Imperium, to reshape the Imperium's political and military structure. In this way, the men and women of the Imperium could face the new post-heresy realities of an interstellar government, where the Emperor was no longer capable of carrying on the day-to-day tasks of interstellar governance. The Imperial Army was divided into the land-based forces of the Astra Militarum and the space-based forces of the Navis Imperialis, each with a separate chain of command structure and bureaucracy. As noted above, the remaining 9 loyalist Space Marine legions adopted the Codex Astartes written by Guilliman and were split into the many smaller Space Marine chapters of the Second Founding that were comprised of only 1,000 warriors, each along with their own supporting spacecraft and planetary fiefdoms. The era of Imperial peace and reconstruction came to an end when the Orcs rampaged across the Imperium on a massive scale from 546 M32. The number of greenskin attacks grew until it became the greatest Orc invasion that the galaxy had ever known, eclipsing even the Orc Waaagh, defeated by the Emperor and Horus during the Ulanor Crusade in Audavelant M30, which had earned Horus the title of Warmaster. Nothing was safe from the Orcs' primal desire to conquer the galaxy, and their widespread advances were only halted when the Imperium resorted to the use of the most extreme measures, at great cost to the chapters of the Adeptus Astartes. This conflict was remembered as the War of the Beast. The traumas of this time led to the division of the Inquisition into separate specialties to safeguard humanity in the future from further Xenos assaults. As such, the Inquisition was reorganized into separate divisions or ordos, including the Ordo Malleus that was intended to carry on the Inquisition's original mandate to protect the Imperium from the machinations of chaos, and the new Ordo Xenos, to defend humanity against assaults by aliens. The Ordo Xenos was further bolstered by the creation of its chamber militant, the Death Watch, a new chapter of the Adeptus Astartes comprised of veteran space marines drawn from multiple different chapters. The Byzantine politics of the Imperium took a calamitous turn in 546 M32, in the wake of the War of the Beast, in an event remembered as the Beheading, when the High Lords of Terror, the successors of the Imperium's original Council of Terror that had been established after the heresy, to administer the day-to-day affairs of the Imperium in the Emperor's name, were slain to the last individual on the orders of Drakon Van Gorich, the Grand Master of the Officio Assassinorum. A Space Marine retribution force drawn from the Halo Brethren, Imperial Fists and Sable Swords. Chapters tracked the Grand Master to an Assassinorum temple on Terra. The commander of the Astartes strike force was assassinated as soon as he made planetfall, but the remaining Battle Brothers carried out the attack without him. Inside the temple, they were attacked by 100 Eversor assassins. Only a single Space Marine, Maximus Thane, the Lord Commander of the Imperium and Chapter Master of the Imperial Fists, survived to reach Grandmaster Vangerich and end his life with a bolt pistol. The Imperium ultimately descended into anarchy for a standard century until new High Lords were chosen following an intervention on Terra by 50 chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, led by Agnathio, the Chapter Master of the Ultramarines, who chose 12 new High Lords with his fellow Chapter Masters in a single session of the Senatorum Imperialis, the Forging, Sia M32, Sia M35. The Forging is also sometimes known to Imperial historians as the Golden Age of the Imperium. During this period, the Adeptus Terra brought the most important human-settled star systems of the galaxy that had not been reached by the Great Crusade under Imperial control and expanded the interstellar borders of the Imperium. Internal stability was gained with the establishment of astropath choirs on countless worlds, with major hubs established on the best-garrisoned Imperial worlds, including Armageddon, Barca, and Macragge. This allowed a reliable network of interstellar, superluminal communication to function using the power of an astropath's astro-telepathy to send and receive messages across light years. This period also saw a slowing in the gradual decline of the Imperium's technology level from its pre-heresy height, and the growth of the interstellar economy due to the rediscovery of a valuable portion of a standard template construct, STC database, from the age of technology in the Kana system as the Imperium expanded. Once more, the Imperium repelled the forces of Chaos renegades, heretics and aliens alike across the galaxy and reclaimed countless lost and rebellious regions for the human species. The Emperor, always an object of veneration and divine worship since the Great Crusade and the days of the cult of the Lectitio Divinitatus, only increased his devoted following of worshippers after being joined to the Golden Throne, which was hailed by his faithful as his ascension from the physical to the spiritual plane, from whence he would further guide and protect humanity. Many imperial cults dedicated to the worship of the Emperor. As the one true god of humanity arose over the following centuries, the majority of which were ultimately repressed, united with or absorbed into a centralized faith known as the Temple of the Savior Emperor. This powerful church gained further momentum among the masses of the imperial faithful until, in the 32nd millennium, it was finally granted the status of the official state religion of the Imperium and the title of Adeptus Ministorum, more often called the Ecclesiarchy by the people of the Imperium. It was only a few standard centuries later, in the mid-32nd millennium, that Ecclesiarch Veneris II received a seat amongst the High Lords of Terra. And after 300 standard years, the seat reserved for the state church's governing ecclesiarch was made permanent within the ranks of the Senatorum Imperialis. It was in 646 M32 that Agnathio, the chapter master of the Ultramarines, united over 50 leaders from other chapters of the Adeptus Astartes, as noted above, and arrived upon Terra. Such a show of power and faith put an end to the squabbling for the contentious seats of the High Lords of Terra that had consumed the differing imperial factions since the beheading. In locked council with the mightiest of humanity's warriors, such matters were quickly sorted out. To this day, none know exactly what was done or said, but when the Space Marines departed back to their far-scattered missions, there once again sat 12 High Lords of Terra in the Senatorum Imperialis. If there was further dissension, none dared speak it aloud. In 1888 M32, the Imperium was consumed by the event known as the Astropath Wars. There is no further information on this conflict available in Imperial records. In 910.M32, the event known as the Firestorm unfolded. There is no further information on this conflict available in Imperial records. Sometime during the 33rd millennium, the War of the Confessor unfolded, when in a particularly violent display, the Adeptus Ministorum exerted its newfound political strength. Many key shrine worlds were added to its holdings during this first of the many wars of faith to come. In 265 M33, Admiral Usus of the Imperial Navy was cast down by the High Lords of Terra for becoming too ambitious. However, he was still too powerful within the Navis Imperialis to be executed without initiating a costly civil war, so he was instead dispatched on an explorator mission to the intergalactic gulf beyond the rim of the galaxy. For the following solar decade, Usur's reports reached Terra by Astropath, detailing the conquest of new star systems for the Emperor. After 2 solar decades, these reports finally ceased. Contact was never re-established by the Imperium, with the star system's usurers mentioned in his reports. In 313 M33, the Siege of Eternity's Gate unfolded. No further information is available. In 615 M33, the Blade of Infinity, a pre-heresy cruiser, emerged from the warp, its re-entry signature suggesting that it had left real space over 20,000 standard years before. This period predated even the warp drive's invention in the age of technology and suggested a radical time stream disorder. Vox transmissions picked up from the vessel suggested that the Blade of Infinity was trying to communicate some type of warning, but before much could be deciphered, the ancient starship disappeared once again into the warp. In its wake arrived an invasion fleet of Chaos Space Marine traitor legions, the arch-enemy of the Imperium who wreaked much havoc. The Blade of Infinity re-emerged from the warp several more times in subsequent years, always as a harbinger of further incursions into Imperial space by the forces of chaos from the Immaterium. In 831 M33, during what became known as the Year of the Ghosts, the Honored Dead rose up in the Segmentum Solar to drive back the terrors of the warp. Sometime during the early years of M34, a great threat to the Imperium arose beyond the ghost stars. Even today, its true nature remains suppressed or redacted within Imperial records. The ravages are said to cause the extermination of a score of Space Marine chapters and souls unnumbered. Much of the extant evidence relating to this threat has been censored or purposely destroyed by the Inquisition, but there are contradictory indications which describe the nature of the threat as both a star-spawned plague that swept away scores of worlds and to nightmare engines that slaughtered the populations of whole sectors. This threat is remembered only as the Pale Wasting. In 401.M34, the terrible crisis known as the Howling unfolded. Black Templar Space Marines ended the Catalexis heresy by executing the Cacodominus, an alien cybernetic psyker whose formidable powers allowed it to psychically control the populace of 1,300 star systems. Unfortunately, the Cacodominus's death scream was amplified by the warp and burned out the minds of 1 billion human astropaths, while it also distorted the beacon of the Astronomicon. Millions of starships were lost in the resulting upheaval, and entire subsectors of the Imperium slid once more into barbarism, without the dictates of the Adeptus Terra to guide them. It is a terrible price to pay for victory. Following a fierce warp storm bursting from the Eye of Terror in 666 M34, the first of many unnatural phenomena known as warp stars are sighted. The tendrils of their power pulled any starships or small planets that fell within their reach to a grisly, if spectacular, doom. In 934 to M34 came the warnings of the craft world Ulthwi to the Imperium. No further records are available as to the nature or content of this warning. That shall conclude our lesson for today, dear listener. I look forward to continuing our discussion next time, as we discuss the time of the Twin Empires.